Joining me now, Chuck Rosenberg, former senior FBI official, former U.S. attorney. He is also an MSNBC contributor. And you and I have been watching this from the very start. What have we learned of substance here?
Well, the word you used just a moment ago, Chris, so well describes this hearing. It's been contentious. We've learned a few things, right? We've learned, at least out of Whitaker's own mouth, the acting attorney general, that he says he has not interfered in the investigation. He's following normal procedure and protocol. That is to be expected. It's to be hoped for. It's the bare minimum that we should expect from an attorney general of the United States. Saying that someone has met the bare minimum, I gather, is damning with faint praise. But in terms of the actual investigation, I wouldn't expect any attorney general to share those details publicly or in this setting. That wouldn't be proper.
He says he has not interfered in any way, and yet there is a key question here about the questions he would not answer. And he tried to make it very clear that I am not invoking executive privilege. Only the president can invoke executive privilege. But he certainly gave the indication on several different points that he did not feel he could answer the question. And the White House had actually set this up, Chuck, earlier, because it had put out a statement from Sarah Sanders where she said that this is, all politics and they should not ask him to talk about private conversations in a public setting. Where does that leave us?
Well, so there is a real thing called executive privilege, and presidents of both parties, Chris, have asserted it, and it's a valid assertion of privilege. That said, not everything you say to a president and not everything a president says is covered by executive privilege, and the Supreme Court has made clear that executive privilege at times has to yield to more compelling circumstances, such as a grand jury subpoena. That was the famous Nixon case, where he was ordered to turn over the tapes. He said, I can't do it, executive privilege. It was litigated, and the Supreme Court 8-0 said, President Nixon, you lose, turn over the tapes. So it is a real thing, not a fake thing, but it doesn't apply to every conversation, and the law recognizes that there are compelling circumstances that occasionally overcome executive privilege.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.